guys so much for being here today, and I know you have such a busy schedule, but I'm really excited to ask you some questions about the project and hear more about it. So if you'd like to introduce yourselves and then give us a little background on your work, and then a little introduction to the project and your individual parts in it. So.
I am Marguerite Perret. I am a professor at Washburn University, and I teach a variety of different courses, including some courses on science and art. And my work is installation-based and multidisciplinary in nature, and deals with art and health, art and science, and social social issues, and trying to work through those things, but through an aesthetic lens that pulls people in and engages them, and then leaves everything open-ended so people can think about those issues and make their own conclusions.
My name is Bruce Scherting. I'm currently the director of Project Art at the University of Iowa Hospitals and Clinics, and so it's my responsibility to identify art that is supportive of a healthcare environment and purchase original works of art for display in public areas, waiting rooms, patient rooms, all public spaces, to help people feel more at ease at trying times. And we've been working together collaboratively for quite a few years, two decades, I guess. And so a lot of what I bring to the process is we work a lot on concept development together, research, a lot of research, and I engage a lot in the space and space planning, and because I have a long history of exhibition development, planning and design, so that's sort of what I get involved in most heavily.
Awesome. So thinking about place and space, what excites you most about coming to Oklahoma or even to Stillwater and our university and working on this project?
Well, I think it's always interesting to meet new people and find out what issues are important to people in different communities. And in OSU, there's a completely different group of researchers who are working with things that I have not been exposed to before, and so it's always very fresh, and I just feel like we are having this really fantastic opportunity to get to know Oklahoma and the environment, through the environment, because those are the people that we've been talking to, through this idea of place and environment.
And with that, it's nice to see the level of energy and excitement that these people have in what they're doing. They're very passionate about what they are engaged in their research and their efforts to solve problems. And I think in our, I think that's sort of the root of everything I think that we like to engage in is problem solving. And so we're finding a very supportive environment of that creative search for answers.
And that extends out into the community, because we've also been talking to people in the community more broadly, people who are addressing issues around water through what they do for the city of Stillwater. And so that's been very interesting too.
And they are also very passionate, about what they do and why they do it, and how to make improvements. And so it's been a very energizing visit.
Yeah, good. So you guys are, not new to collaborating with other people, but this project seems to involve not only, the OSU community and different departments within the university, but the Stillwater community more broadly, and, you could even extend that to the Oklahoma region. So what's the biggest challenge you feel that maybe you're facing with this project, or that you're anticipating bringing all these different people together to focus on one kind of unifying theme?
I think that is exactly the challenge, because it's also interesting, and finding ways to incorporate all these different points of view, and then also have a coherent narrative for the exhibition.
Yeah.
And so one of the ways that we are going to do that is we are going to collect and present stories, and maybe some of this will be very short and some of it will be longer, but we are going to collect people's personal feelings, because water is just so personal. It's something that you take into your body and absorb into your own self. So there's a lot of personal perspectives about water, as well as the research aspects, dealing with the challenges regarding water. And so one of the things we are going to do is collect stories and some video and some recording of stories while we are here at various times researching this project and through the residency in 2020. So I think that's one thing that will really give a very local feeling to this concern, and also enable us to deal with things that maybe we can't address fully through all the artwork.
And I think another challenge, I think that so we are collecting a lot of great information, perspectives and ideas, and one of the big challenges is then to retain the art aspect of this project.
Yeah.
And so translating that into emotional, visual experiences that, as you sort of mentioned, sort of have provide an opportunity for open discovery. So it takes time, I think, to look at these types of installations and artwork to sort of unpack them. And I think through that process of trying to understand the artwork, it slows people down and sort of requires them to become thoughtful.
Yeah.
So, and I think that slowing down process then makes people more receptive to dialogue and discussion, hopefully. So that's sort of
Yeah, all of our work is very layered. So you may approach something and say, oh, this is this like really beautiful thing, and then you start to realize that the individual components are telling you more about the subject. And so it pulls you in because it's beautiful and it's engaging you to come and look at it. And then there's all these other components that are contributing to that aesthetic experience that are actually referencing maybe something in science, a particular issue, particular place.
That's another question I have for you guys is, do you think that there will be a struggle trying to convince your audience that this project is an artwork, or do you see it as just an artwork, or is there another way we can talk about this piece that allows for more engagement and a broader audience?
I don't think we've ever in all the projects that we worked on, no one's ever questioned whether it was art. So hadn't really thought about that question. I think
it's that layering.
I think it's the layering and the complexity and the multiple perspectives that then basically sort of take people away, or literally sort of engage them, if not with us, within themselves, a dialogue. So I think that's ultimately sort of our goal in that, I guess.
Well, and there may be pieces that are experiential, and you'll come in and you'll feel immersed in maybe like this video projection that is making you feel like you're in a watery kind of environment. But then there will be other components that are happening in the gallery space and within the video and on the structure that you're standing on that are layering in additional information. So some people, people can come to it and they can experience it in different ways. They can experience it through aesthetics, and then they can also start unpacking the information that's being presented as well. And it goes pretty deep. So people can really spend a lot of time exploring these pieces and these galleries, and then again, what we try to do is leave things open enough that people have room to think about these issues, and not just we don't like to lecture to people.
Right. Your work broadly seems very interdisciplinary and, you know, really collaborative. So how would you suggest that, you know, we at OSU or, you know, in Oklahoma can really combine the arts and sciences more often? Like, what are some ways that, you know, we can practice this outside of the project?
Well, I think, so you might be able to speak a little bit better to there's sort of this initiative for research on water, food, and...
Right, well, that's part of the university is
Right,
emphasizing
right.
that, but that doesn't necessarily fold all those things into one
Well,
place, yeah.
Yeah.
But it is being
does.
encouraged.
It does in a big way because
Yeah.
we're all sort of grappling with these bigger problems everywhere. And by engaging someone that's a visual thinker or a designer in the process of setting up research programs or study, you bring in a very different perspective that might ask questions in a slightly different way that might then trigger some other thoughts or some other approaches. And so by having different people outside of your discipline and as part of the team, as part of the development of a research project, it just sort of, again, it sort of just has an opportunity to slow people down a little bit and reconsider some of the approaches that they're taking, because now they have to sort of think about a little bit another perspective. And I think that can be helpful.
Yeah.
And that's where interdisciplinarity becomes really important to contemporary culture and research and education and everything. That we have, all these issues are extremely complex. There's social issues, there's economic components, there's environmental components, there's different constituencies that are seeing these things in different ways. And if you have one narrow point of view that's trying to construct a solution to a problem, perhaps you're not fully identifying how complex that issue is, and it won't be successful. So bringing lots of different people in to work on it, and the arts have a role in that, certainly, I think brings forward better solutions, better ideas towards addressing these things.
Yeah. I was really struck at the luncheon the other day when someone from the Department of Architecture said that our community is really ready to talk about the issue of water. And so, you know, I was wondering, are you sometimes afraid to talk about these issues that, you know, in a time when we seem so isolated from one another? Are you afraid to go kind of in a political direction, or do you feel that sometimes your artwork is too political for communities that aren't ready to talk about it yet?
I think I was really, at the talk, I was happy to see the mix of people that were there. There were research people, there were service people, community people, art representatives, and there may have been some others that I don't recall, but I sort of look at this type of a project as a conduit that brings hopefully these people together for discussion and not trying to, you know, actually trying to be collaborative as a community to solve these problems, because as you said, they're very complex. And I think if we can create something that, again, slows people down and creates an opportunity to listen and think about it, I think I'm not afraid to talk about these types of issues.
Well, I would say everything is political.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
you know, if you're talking about partisan politics, where I'm going to be this party and I'm against that party, that's a whole different thing. Everything is political.
Yeah.
And I don't think that there's any fear of talking about important issues and bringing them forward and presenting them and asking people to think critically about them and to explore the complexity of those issues. I think that's exactly what needs to happen now. I think we are being too simplistic. We are not talking to each other enough. We need to actually become more involved, not less involved with what's happening.
Yeah. And thinking about this kind of maybe fear that people have in talking about this, at the talk, there was also a mention of like shame being associated with water, and I'm just wondering if you could talk more about that, how maybe people feel shameful of either how they use water in their own personal life, or how can we combat this to kind of really talk about or engage everyone in this conversation of how they use water, because we all use it. That's just the reality of it.
Well, I do think that a lot of the things that we need to look at moving forward are personal, but there are also things that we have to agree to as a community, that the way that water is processed and brought to us and valued has to be changed. So water is pretty cheap, but it's the actual cost of the water, if you think about times of drought and its availability, and is actually pretty expensive, and those are things that we don't take into account. So I think it has to be coming from the community perspective and then the individual perspective. So the shaming of water where people are brushing their teeth and they didn't turn the water off, that's not a helpful thing. I mean, certainly education is important, and trying to promote a conservation on an individual level is very important. But we need to be talking about it on a community and regional and statewide and nationwide and global perspective of how to deal with these issues.
Where do you make the largest gains from a conservation perspective and still provide the services that are required?
Instead of making people feel bad about themselves, I don't see anything that's gained by that. I think certainly education is a good thing, and helping people think about their behavior is a good thing, but not through shaming. That just doesn't work.
Right. So you guys have been here for a week so far. Is there anything this week that has really surprised you about the Oklahoma landscape or being in Stillwater, and how is that going to impact the project?
I just think we had a lot of really good conversations, and we met a lot of people, and that's thank you to the museum for all the coordination and communication to make this happen. I just found it to be refreshing in a lot of ways. So it makes me hopeful that that maybe people are ready to talk about.
Yeah, in a good way too. I think in a really positive way. The people we talked to people from the city, and one of the things that Luann Fisher's told us, who's at the wastewater treatment plant, is that she sees her role as saving the earth. I know, and so I feel really positive about what's happening in Stillwater and the community, and everybody we talked to was very concerned, but also very positive about how they could move forward as a community. And so I thought that was really remarkable. And the treatment plant acknowledges that they had some issues in the past, but they're moving forward, and they're very concerned and passionate about maintaining good quality water for the community. The researchers all have things that they're doing that some of them were surprising to us because we hadn't even thought about that angle. But they are all working very hard to find solutions to different issues, or be able to bring forth information that could be helpful in moving forward. So it's a very forward-thinking place, Stillwater. That's my impression.
Yeah, I think people seemed a little concerned that this, that we might feel a negative emotional impact, talking about water. So it's really refreshing to see the hope and happiness that people will gain from working.
Even the people who had concerns or were critical of things that happened in the past are ready for something else to happen now. And so they're open to that, and even when they had opportunities to talk to people who they felt may have had some responsibility for these things, they're excited that there might be opportunities to also move forward and deal with those issues. So I thought that was really people talking to each
Yeah.
other.
Right.
Even though there may have been a little confrontation at the beginning, but then talking to each other.
Yeah, that's so exciting. So what is the biggest takeaway that you want people to gain from engaging in this work?
That's something we're working on.
Yeah.
Because so we've been the whole part of this visit was a kind of a collecting visit to just hear, what's going on, what their interests are, what their concerns are, what people want, what they love, those types of things. So now a big part of our road trip back home will be talking and sorting, and we've already sort of done some preliminary planning and trying to cite a lot of this information and art into the space, but I'm going to just say a work in progress.
Yeah.
And
Well,
you may have a little
Well, I hope they see it that it's a system.
Yeah.
That water
Yeah.
is, all these systems are part of the Earth's systems. They're individual, community, global concerns because they're a system that moves, it's constantly changing, and we can't survive without being cognizant of that. And so that's what I hope. They start to see it as an individual concern because it is so personal. Something like air that you breathe, the water that you drink, the food that you eat, these are things that you take into your own body. And so it's extremely personal. But then it's also part of a larger system. And so I'm hoping that they can kind of move back and forth between those things and really see the implications of becoming more engaged and working forward as a community, as an individual and community.
So my last question for you guys is, I really want to know how we can get involved, if we can share with students, if you need volunteers or interns, or let us know how we can help with this project.
Well, yeah, I think that students can get involved at all different levels. There will be opportunities to engage with the work itself and maybe contribute to some of we're planning on building things and making things that we can use help with, collecting stories, organizing our social media stories. People who maybe have some programming experience, that would be really helpful and awesome to work with any students who have those skills. There's a lot of ways. I mean, it's a big endeavor. We need people on the ground because we're going to be coming back and forth, and we'll have the artist residency, but we don't live here full time. And I think that we can definitely embrace almost anything that students want to, any aspect students want to be involved in.
And the museum's education coordinator has done a great job of already reaching out to a lot of these different areas in the sciences and the arts, and has sort of identified, I think, some really great potential partnerships. And so I think just the biggest thing is sort of keeping that rolling and going, and we've got some really, I think, again, just really, we've had some very good conversations and have looked at a number of possible ways that students can contribute in creative and meaningful ways. So I'm actually pretty excited about that too. The more that we can sort of share with the authoring, I think, and the messaging and collecting community voices, I think the better the whole experience will be received. So.
Well, and just like water itself is, reflects the community. We hope this show will reflect the community, and so that means that every involvement of students is very important because they're so important to the community.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it, and we'll put this online, and hopefully we can get some people ready to work on this for you guys.
Great. Yes, that would be very exciting. We're very open.
Awesome. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.